Hi again, everybody. Welcome to the Bricks and Bleachers podcast. All things Chicago Cubs in under 10 minutes. Opening weekend is behind us, and the Cubs are on the road for their first road trip of the year. We will recap that opening series, get you set up for the week ahead, and catch you up on what's new for the 2022 season. It is Tuesday morning. Cubs are 2-1 after an opening weekend series with the Milwaukee Brewers. A series which saw the Cubs have two convincing wins Thursday and Saturday. Bullpen let one get away on Sunday. Kyle Hendricks, the opening day starter for the third year in a row, pitched into the sixth on Thursday, left with a 3-1 lead. It was tied at 3 in the seventh before the Cubs won 5-4. Weather canceled Friday's game or moved it back to May 30th. Cubs came back Saturday with a convincing 9-0 win. Justin Steele looked really good as the starter. 5 strikeouts, gave up 4 hits in 5 innings. Game highlighted by an incident that cleared the benches in the 8th inning. We'll have more on that in a moment. Suspensions have been handed out. And on Sunday, Marcus Stroman made his debut with the Cubs. A nice 5-inning outing, left with a 3-1 lead. But the Cubs didn't keep that lead for long. It was tied at 4 after 6 before the Brewers added one more in the 7th, held on for a 5-4 win. Cubs starters look good throughout the opening series, while it was a nightmare for the Milwaukee starters. Cubs scored more runs on Corbin Burnes, Brandon Woodruff, and Freddie Peralta this weekend than they did against those guys all of last year. These teams play 19 times a year. And that's comparing 13 runs scored this weekend in 12 2/3 innings versus 12 runs in over 74 innings last year against those 3 pitchers. Back to the kerfuffle in Saturday's game. Keegan Thompson throwing at the Brewers outfielder Andrew McCutchen. He handled it okay. He was calm and collected, but the benches cleared and Thompson was thrown out. He has now been suspended. That news came out last night for Major League Baseball. Thompson suspended for 3 games. Cubs manager David Ross also suspended for 1 game. Ross will miss this afternoon's game in Pittsburgh. It is not yet known if Thompson will appeal the suspension. If not, he too will serve his 3 games beginning this afternoon. And the way the schedule works out, Thompson, I believe Thompson can skate by without missing a start as long as he does not appeal. A lot of batters hit by pitch between the Cubs and Brewers this weekend and last couple of years, really. Just in this series, Contreras hit in 2 of the 3 games. Ian Happ ended up leaving Saturday's game after being hit. He is okay. Should not impact availability moving forward. No doubt, this has turned out to be quite a rivalry between the Cubs and Brewers. So this year, to help offset the abbreviated spring training, the Cubs and all teams in Major League Baseball are allowed a 28-man active roster here in the month of April. They'll revert to the usual 26-man roster on May 1. So far, Cubs' opening day roster remains intact. 14 pitchers, 14 position players. Cubs have Wilson Contreras and Yan Gomes behind the plate. Really great combo. Infielders group includes Nico Horner, Nick Madrigal, Alfonso Rivas, Frank Schwindel, Jonathan Villar, and Patrick Wisdom. A lot of flexibility with most of these guys being able to play multiple positions, and they will, according to manager David Ross. Plus, the designated hitter this year gives him more flexibility as well. You might want to give a guy a little rest, not have him playing in the field, but you don't want to lose his bat, so you put him in the DH spot. The outfielder group also offers a lot of flexibility. With Clint Frazier coming off a hot spring, Ian Happ is back, along with Michael Hermosillo, Jason Hayward, Rafael Ortega, and Seiya Suzuki. Now, I've mentioned before my fandom of Nick Madrigal. He gives the Cubs a much-needed solid bat, likely a 300 hitter. Well, the signing of Suzuki is even more exciting, in my opinion. He tore it up in Japan, and that doesn't always translate. In fact, there are plenty of times guys are amazing in Asia, whether it's Japan or Korea. Come over here, not as good. But I'm thinking this guy is going to be one of the guys who makes the transition with no problem. He was fun to watch this weekend, in fact. But during his time in Japan, like 10 years, guy has an on-base percentage greater than 400. He's got a fun personality, too. And he wears number 27 on his uniform due to him being a big fan of Mike Trout. Cubs 14 pitchers on the roster to begin the year. Most of these guys are names that are familiar either as returning Cubs or from facing the Cubs in recent years. Jesse Chavez is back. Scott Effross and Michael Givens are bullpen additions. Kyle Hendricks, Chris Martin, Daniel Morris, and Ethan Roberts. You may have seen the video of Roberts learning he was making the team. That video went viral beginning of last week as David Ross had a quick moment telling Roberts, hey, you made the team. Perhaps maybe the last spot on the roster. It was really something to see. David Ross also has David Robertson, Michael Rucker, Drew Smiley to rely on, plus Justin Steele, Marcus Stroman, Keegan Thompson, and Rowan Wick. That is your 28-man roster from opening day, and it's still in place here on Tuesday morning. Now, the rotation includes a pretty solid 3 up front: Kyle Hendricks, Justin Steele, and Marcus Stroman. After that, it gets a little tricky with a plethora of back-end rotation options. Drew Smiley appears to have a spot for now. And then the 5th spot, unclear to begin the year, as Alec Mills begins the season on the injured list. Adbert Alzolay and Wade Miley are on the injured list as well. Mills and Miley are rehabbing in Arizona. Mills could be returning soon. Miley a little behind, maybe a couple of weeks of May, perhaps early May is when he will be ready to go for the Cubs. Andrelton Simmons was signed during the offseason. He, too, probably ready to go soon as another shortstop option. This and that. This is our news and notes segment with tidbits from around Major League Baseball, a few Cubs notes thrown in here as well. We only saw this a time or two throughout opening weekend, but umpires are now mic'd up to inform the crowd of review outcomes or to fill us in on what's actually being reviewed. We've seen this a ton of times. Last couple of years, the game comes to a stop. There's a review, something going on, but we don't know exactly what. And then they resume the game without a clear explanation. So this is a good move. Player statues at Wrigley are on the move. We've already heard about that during the offseason. But now we know they're all going to be appearing at Gallagher Way. Fergie Jenkins getting a statue to be unveiled in May, and I believe all of the other Cubs player statues will be in place at Gallagher Way at that time. The Harry Carey statue, though, will remain behind the center field bleachers. Mentioned earlier, but worth repeating, designated hitter is in place throughout all of Major League Baseball. No more pitchers who could rake moments. I love those. Cubs are off to a 2-0 start after Saturday's action. A lot of good Cubs teams in the last 25 years, but the only other Cubs team to start 2-0 during that time, 2016. How about that? Finally, Shohei Ohtani last week became the first ever to throw his team's first pitch of the season and also face his team's first pitch of the season as a hitter. He is so much fun to watch. It's a shame, due to time difference playing on the West Coast with the Angels, we don't see more of him. Almost out of time, but let's take a look at the week ahead for the Cubs. 2 in Pittsburgh, Drew Smiley and Jose Quintana, the pitching matchup this afternoon at PNC Park. First pitch at 4:12 Eastern. It is the Pirates' home opener. Early game on Wednesday with Kyle Hendricks back on the mound for the Cubs. Zach Thompson for the Pirates. 12:35 start time, so the Cubs could wrap it up and head west for a 4-game set in Denver with the Rockies. No doubt a lot of eyes on that series, especially on Chris Bryant and how he will perform against the Cubs. And that's it for this episode of the Bricks and Bleachers podcast. All things Chicago Cubs in under 10 minutes. If you haven't already, be sure to subscribe on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, or wherever you get yours so you never miss an episode of the Bricks and Bleachers podcast.